All right, so we're doing a little bit of pre-run maintenance on the dozer. I've been running it through that rough material, so I just want to make sure everything's good. So I'm going to check all these little bolts out here. That you can see I've had to replace one before on there. And we want to check our motors, make sure they're tight, that we don't have any slop, because sometimes back in there they'll come loose off of the chassis. The motor will start getting loose. It'll start rubbing right down in here if that starts happening. Especially as you get rocks and stuff that put more tension on the track. These idler wheels, check those and make sure that those are free, because those will run up a little bit. I had some rubber across that. As you can see, those wheels move up, and so I need to adjust that a little bit, because it made that rubber come off there. Up in the front also, that rubber come off. But on this side, the front rubber has stayed on there, and I didn't have any rocks getting in there. Let's see if I can get that to focus better. I didn't have any rocks getting in there, getting in this idler. They were all stacking up on the other side. And so every time I go backwards, you get this real bad squeak, because that's when it locks up that idler wheel, and then the track just running against that idler wheel gets you a really bad squeak. Sounds kind of skill, but nonetheless, it's not healthy for the machine. It's just extra work it's got to do. So I want to try and work that over here. Look like all of our fasteners are in here. Don't look like any of them are backing out. However, when I get up underneath the machine, I'm missing one there, so I got to replace that one. That front top one's loose. The rest of them are looking all right, and I think I got one missing on the other side. Yep, right there. But the rest of them are looking pretty good. So I'll go grab some screws and we'll put some screws in it. All right, so first things first, I pulled this one out to go get the right size. So we're gonna Loctite this puppy up, because it was a little bit loose. So we're gonna throw a little bit of Loctite on there. Okay, throw that puppy in there. All right, let's get this thing flipped over. All right. Check some of these that look loose. That's the one that's missing. Touch loose. Okay, those are good. Get this Loctited up. Brought some pliers out with me. I'm going to use my ball end. Don't even fit. Okay. All right, so that's tightened up. Everything looks good on that side. All right, now we'll move on to the other side over here. I'll go ahead and Loctite this dude up here first. Get it tipped over. All right, it's going right in there. Rubber all tight. We'll check this side here. Primarily after the ones that look loose, because if they don't look loose, they're not. Nope. Those all look good. Okay, already checked that motor. Oh, what I found. Some of the material we're working. The big job. Piece of crushed concrete. Alright. I don't even know where it fell out of. It's from way up underneath here somewhere. Alright, so just inspecting everything. And okay, so I got the rubber on there. I want to put a piece of rubber right back here. I want to get a little piece on that. So we'll try this again. So now I know that moves. So I want to be cautious of that. We're going to use a little different glue too. So we'll cut some of that off. I just want to strip just, yeah, there we go. Just enough to keep rock from falling down in there. Okay. Then we're going to try a little different glue, see if this holds a little bit better to the rubber. That other glue I used, I mean, it is on that painted surface just really well. It didn't stick to the rubber real good. So we're going to see if this one has a little bit better rubber adhesion. Just stick a little bit of that on there. It's kind of like a mud flap, you know. We'll call it a rock guard. Get that put in place. Because what happens is, I mean, any rocks that do manage to make it up past that, or when I'm turning, if they get shoved in and they just kind of work their way up, they'll fall down in there. Same with the up front, it does the same thing, but even more so, up front it has a tendency to just roll right in there. And like I said, this left side where the mud flap rock guard stayed in place, I didn't have any problems. But working that material over there, that right side track over on the other side did have some pretty major problems. Cap my Loctite. The glue's starting to ooze. I want to get that on my truck. So we'll leave it over the rubber. Alright. Now I'll cut me out another piece of rubber here for this backside right here. I think that should be right enough. Hold the backing off. I think I might need that a little bit thinner for that side, but let me cut that down. If I take it too far forward, it'll get to where the gears catch it. I'm going to thin that out just a little bit. Alright, that should work. be careful, this dries pretty quick. I've got nice and tacky. Get that glue, and roll that up to the front. Get a little glue on that front side. Good. Alright, I'm getting glue on my hands. I'm gonna go get a rag. Alright, next we want to see if we can get a piece of rubber on this front one, right up here. Let's see. Might be a little bit hard for you guys to see. See if I can get a better angle on it here without getting in your way. Alright. So maybe you can see it better from there. See if any of that old glue wants to come off, which it doesn't. Get a little bit in here. Okay. Alright. So I think this piece, yeah, I'll get a new piece. Because that one won't give me enough surface area for the glue to hold. Width is good on that. So we'll just kind of take the same width here. Cut our piece out. Alright, get our length. Cut our length out. Check fit. That looks good. Okay, pull our backing off. Get ourselves some glue on that. Nice sticky, goopy stuff here. Back side. Left side. I'll just leave the front area where the tire will rub unglued. Alright, I should have lowered that arm. That's alright, we'll stick it up underneath. Ah, beautiful. Got our mud flap, our rock guard in place. Hopefully that will work and stay on like the other side has stayed on. So I tell you what, man, keep them rocks out of those idlers, and then this thing don't have a whole lot of problems with that rock. It's been handling it pretty good. I've been worried about these ears down here getting damaged, but so far everything's been looking pretty good. So these have not been running into too many issues. I was worried about them breaking these little tiny ears off, but they've been holding up so far. You can see on the tracks there's areas where it's a lot of glue on my finger still, but a lot of areas where it's rubbed on there, but that's all right as long as it don't break. All right, so I think I gotta add a little bit of oil to this guy, so we'll go get our oil and add a little bit of oil to it just to make sure we're topped off. I noticed when I was getting on some angles, I was starting to run out of fluid to the pump, and I've noticed this thing at high angles, and at certain tilt angles doesn't like it. It runs out of, unless you have the tank really full. And then you wind up dripping out where I've repositioned my overflow, and you can see I even have a little bit of oil coming out that overflow right there. And that is just kind of normal because it was all over the front of this machine. But I was getting all kinds of oil out this overflow just from hitting different angles and stuff, so it gets on my tracks, which is fine. You can see, get a little bit right in here too. That's from the overflow, not from the hydraulics, because it's from clear up in here. But this thing used to be just right in here, and it'd get all over the machine. That was nasty. So I put it to where it just pours out the back right here, just drips onto the tracks. But like I said, if that tank's not full, it'll get at certain angles, and then it doesn't, the hydraulics don't want to work. So I got to keep that tank a little fuller than I normally would, because I'm always working this thing at some pretty awkward angles. Alright, so I got my oil. I'm going to start with about 5 milliliters. I'm going to use the needle that comes for filling up the little forklift, because this thing's got a tiny hole. So that's a tiny hole. So if you're just kind of dripping it or trying to force it with the tube in there, then it has a tendency to overflow, drip down in there real slow. So we'll try this needle. Ooh, suck it back out. All right. So it'll overflow like that. All right, let's see if that's full. I think that's full. This does have a tube, so even if you just, looks like if you overpower that tube flow, you're just gonna have to let gravity do its job. Can't force feed it. Okay, so we're going a little drip at a time. Oh, man, I pay attention to what I'm videoing and do through the video here. Whoop. And a little rush at the end there. All right, so that's still flowing down. So it's got to work its way down through that tube. So there's no real fast way of filling this. I think we'll go with another, let's go for another 5 milliliters. All right, so I'm going to take my tube of oil here, dip it down. Suck it out of there. Okay. And then we'll go back to drip feeding this guy. Okay, so we'll start by just a nice gentle drip feed. And I do have everything except for these lower ones at their lowest extension rate where it'll take the least amount of oil to fill the cylinders while I'm filling this tank. So if I start seeing something overflowing out here, I know I'm over full. But then as it's operating, it shouldn't cause my tank to overfill too much, except for slope problems. I don't see nothing coming out the overflow, but it does have to work its way up because it kind of loops up a little bit on the inside of the machine. Ooh, getting a little carried away. Yeah, you shouldn't always have to add too much oil to these things. It depends on how much you use them. If you're noticing a lot of leakage around your seals and stuff, then it might take a little bit more oil, or you might need to replace your seals if it's getting really bad. But like I said, most of mine comes out here just from the high angles of attack. And so maintenance wise, yeah, now and then I do have to add a little bit of oil. Okay, so that's going to be 10 milliliters when I finish that out. We're going to call that good, because it wasn't getting real terrible bad. I just noticed it on a couple of spots when I was working that gravel pit. Call that good. And she's draining all the way down. Okay, so we'll wipe that off, locate our cap, put our cap back on there, and see how she performs now. So that should be it for the maintenance on this dude for this round. Clean off my cylinders here. The least amount of dirt that's on these guys, the better, because that just acts like sandpaper on the ram itself. So probably always a good idea to clean those off. But while it's moving and working, I mean, they just get dirty, so we're just gonna have to count on wear and tear on those items. All right, I think this machine's ready to go.